All right,
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Well, where do you want to start? I mean, first of all, I don't even know how to start, but we're talking war movies, and I want to just say off the bat, we can't talk about every war movie because everyone's always like, how could you do this and not talk about the Dirty Dozen or whatever the fuck?
We're missing a lot of them. I'm trying not to laugh, by the way. One of the comments on YouTube was like, he clearly laughs when he's anxious. And I'm like, I'm like Jerry in the episode where he's trying to be serious, so George doesn't so George looks funny. Yes, Joe. We're not going to do most war movies. And we're going to miss a bunch, you know?
I like the idea. We're definitely not going to do most of them.
Also, we kind of fucked up or whatever. We did 2 Vietnam movies and 1 World War II movie. We probably should have just done Vietnam and said Vietnam movies.
Well, 3 Vietnam movies, right?
Except I didn't get to rewatch Platoon.
That's all right. We can still talk about it. You've seen it, right?
Yeah, we'll talk about it.
We'll touch on it. That's my least favorite one. I'm going to get out ahead of the gang.
Well, you compulsive. I feel like, so the difference is I've seen every movie. I've seen a lot of movies, but I have to rewatch a lot for these. I feel like you treat movies, I think, a lot like music. Well, you just kind of rewatch, right? Like,
yeah, it's interesting because people say that to me. They're like, you see everything. You watch a lot of movies. And I'm like, I actually watch like 9 movies a year. I just watch them over and over again. Like I watch movies all the time, but I don't see, this is where I'm a cunt. I don't watch just like fucking summer, like, silly cops ran around. I'm like, get real. I want, you know, the fucking Oscar bait and some docs and some.
But you rewatch kind of like a song, like you rewatch. Yeah. So for me, I don't really rewatch that much. So for these pods, I have to rewatch a lot of these movies just to be able to defend what I feel, you know?
Yeah. So I've been refreshing. I was just cramming. First of all, this is why we don't have jobs. Like, this is why I can't have a job, because we decided like 8 days ago, we'll talk about these 4 movies. And I'm like, I'm on it. And then I just was like, bah.
Me too. Like, I know. I had to cram them all in, like starting like this morning and a little of last night. So I've just been watching people get blown away nonstop for like 12 hours.
Yeah. So I'm about 20 minutes into Saving Private Ryan, but I've seen it a bunch. And I don't know what order you want to go into, but Saving Private Ryan's fresh on my mind. I just watched Full Metal Jacket.
I just watched both of those today. Let's do Saving Private Ryan. I just finished it.
Okay, so I haven't finished it yet. I mean, I've seen it a bunch. And quick fun story: I saw it in the theater in 1998 in the Randolph Cinemas in Randolph, Mass, and it was the first huge like stadium style seating movie theater.
Oh, cool.
In our area. And like 10 minutes into the movie or 20 minutes into the movie, a bat was in the loose, like in the fucking theater.
Really?
And I got a huge laugh. I was 16 years old, and I stood up and I said, "Does anybody have a butterfly net?" I missed it.
You fucked it up here, but I assume you got it right there.
I got it right there.
That's great.
I said butterfly net. It was sold out, and it killed.
I'm very impressed because I feel like a bat in a theater, that's not a common occurrence in Boston, right?
No, it's pretty frequent.
Is it really? Because it seems like I would have been too shocked to even have a joke ready. I'm very impressed. Like, It's such a crazy thing. That's great. You. That's like George with the, what does he say? That was Hiroshima, or that's gotta hurt, or what is it?
Oh yeah, that's gotta hurt, I think. Yeah.
Saving Private Ryan, I'm glad you got a good laugh watching the, death of our veterans and stuff. But yeah, this is one, because we got you texted me that you're afraid people are gonna shit on us come to Saving Private Ryan. You're like, if we criticize this movie, we'll get mad. I'm like, I'm pretty sure they will, because people got really mad about Home Alone. So they'll definitely people treated Home Alone like it was a Holocaust movie or World War II movie. So they'll definitely lose their shit on this. But what's your issue? You don't like Saving Private Ryan?
I'm going to be blown away if you think this movie's like phenomenal. I don't picture you being like, oh my God, it's a masterpiece.
I want you to get shit on by the people for once. So I want to put you in first. I mean,
I'll go first.
I have opinions, but like, let's get you some heat for once.
Well, first of all, this is nice because it's like reversed with Tuesdays with Stories. Mark could just shit in their mouths and they're like, oh. And I'm like, I don't know about Trump, the Congress.
Dude, I'm getting fucking trolled. I was posting about like my solo show and someone commented, how the fuck do you not like John Candy? Like it was a different thing. It was like, I'm getting attacked here.
No, it's crazy. But so for me, I'm like, yeah, you can be the bad guy on this one.
I know.
But so Saving Private Ryan is it's fun. I like the movie, but even as a teenager, it lost to Shakespeare in Love, and this is where my wife loves me, and everyone's gonna be like, "You're a piece of shit, cuck, homo."
Oh, you agree with that?
But when Shakespeare in Love won the Oscar, I was obsessed with the Oscars when I was a kid. I still love them. When they announced Shakespeare in Love, I jumped up like the Sox won the World Series. I was like, yes. Like, I just thought Shakespeare in Love was such a better movie.
I love how you used a sports metaphor for a very non-jockey moment. Like, when that Gwyneth Paltrow movie won, I don't know about that, but that's quite the take.
Well, Shakespeare in Love, I thought was so original and so funny and clever and sexy and just really like a original, cool movie. And I mean, Judi Dench won the Academy Award. She had 8 minutes of screen time, which is a fucking joke.
Oh, right. Yeah.
But I think Saving Private Ryan is great, but it has that late work of Spielberg cheese, oozing cheese.
Yes.
And we're going to talk about these other movies, but like to watch Full Metal Jacket and Saving Private Ryan back to back.
I know. It's like the least sentimental movie ever, and like a movie that's so corny. Yeah, I mean that's the thing about Spielberg when he does these children's movies or these movies that are like more adventure. They don't really have as much cheese, but when he started getting into historical shit, that's when he gets like the patriotic music over the general making a speech. It gets like it's cornball shit.
Yeah, the opening sequence in Saving Private Ryan, it looks like ABC Family. Like the old man, like, I'm going there. I'm stuck. And then like the dad behind being like, I don't know where he's going. And then he's like taking a photo.
Well, he tries to make it like, he does the same thing as Schindler's List, where he tries to make it more than just a movie. Like Schindler's List is great, but then it ends with like the real Jews putting rocks on Schindler's tombstone. You're like, this isn't a movie anymore. Quit putting this in the movie. And then this, he's like, it just looks like a veteran thing in the beginning. It's really corny, but that being said, it's super corny. But then this is the thing about Spielberg. He can be so corny and yet at the same time, so horrific, like within the corniness. So like that opening is so corny, but then the actual first action sequence is insane. It is like amazing and a nightmare and just incredible.
Yeah, it's tremendous. And I was rereading about some of it. Like a lot of veterans were like running out and couldn't watch it. And I remember people being like dizzy and throwing up and shit.
Yeah, no, it is. I think one of the things, so here's the thing about this, because I do think it's a corny movie with two just amazing action sequences that are very long. They're both like 30 minutes. But that first sequence, I will say this though, the corniness of the opening makes that sequence even more shocking, I think. Just because, I don't know if you felt this while rewatching it, but it starts out so corny, like an old school movie, and then it shows them all in the boats, and you're like, all right, this is just going to be like a corny old movie. And then the boats get into the water, and that first shot where the door of the boat opens and just everyone inside just immediately gets killed, like just, it becomes so intense. And I think the corniness beforehand makes it more of a, almost like a misdirect. Do you see what I'm saying? Like shit, this is, I wasn't expecting this.
Yeah, so I don't know that that's exactly what he was going for. I mean, I guess he did want to set up, but like it didn't have to be so cheesy at the beginning.
Not deliberately, but incidentally, I guess.
Yeah, and there's a lot of like extra cheese on there of like, it's a tough mission, boss. That's why you got it. Like he loves that shit. Like Bridge of Spies is unwatchable. Like that's like the worst movie. They do that repeat dialogue thing that I hate because you're the best. You're the best. But there's some of that. And then there's some of the scenes after the Omaha Beach scene where it's like,
well, it's
like
really
helicopter shot. Like really look at it. Look at all that blood.
What's really bad is, so the sequence is incredible. I just think it's amazing. It's a nightmare. I'm like, especially just something about that first shot of them all getting shot in the boat right away. Because that's definitely me if I was in there. I feel like I would just get shot. I'm dead before the door even opens. I just like.
Well, you'd be fucking dead from seasickness, I assume.
Yeah, I would not make it through that. But But yeah, so like it's so intense, and then it goes on to this such a bullshit. Like, remember the whole thing where do you get to the part where they just go to all the generals talking, and then you get Bryan Cranston, and then the one general takes out a letter, and of course, first of all, for somebody about Abraham Lincoln, he's always brought up. You never mention him at first. It's always like, and then there was that man. And that man was Abraham Lincoln.
That's a good point.
Abraham Lincoln is never, he's the most go-to referenced after you tell the thing. Like, it's always like, and who know who that was? Abraham Lincoln. So he reads a letter, and then by the end, it's like, sincerely, Abraham Lincoln. And it was him again. He's the most like using him as a twist at the end of any story or any quote. But they're having the patriotic music, and it's just so fucking corny. Patriotic music should not be. It's just a corny thing to have in a movie, like that kind of score.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's just there's a lot of like embarrassing stuff in there, and some really bad dialogue. Also, there are some like Spielberg tricks that are too movie. Like the guy with the typewriter is like just such a vehicle of like, and here's the doesn't know how to fight guy. Can I bring my typewriter? And it's also like, I'm sorry, like, so how did he get there? He had to have seen some shit. Like the character is written as though he was airdropped from the fucking Upper West Side into the Omaha Beach. Like he's like, I've never carried a weapon, and you're just kind of like, how did he get to the fucking Omaha Beach?
How did he maintain his pussiness through all this? Surely some of it would have been chipped away, right?
Yeah.
Like you really see people get killed.
It's just so clearly a movie tool. I'm like, well, there's dead people everywhere. Like unless they helicoptered him in afterwards.
That's a good point.
He had to have gotten through that battle.
He's not dead inside at all. He's just completely like, well, he's like, and also, Spielberg said he's the one he relates to.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
So that's his alter ego, the coward. You know what I mean?
Right. And then he's literally wearing, the first scene he appears, he's literally wearing a green sweater vest. Like he has a vest on, and he's like, well, can I bring my typewriter? And it's like, come on, dude. And, he's knocking over stuff like fucking Buster Keaton. He's like, whoops, I can't. And it's just a little much.
But it does make you wonder, like, he is like I'm like a coward, right? And
sure.
and, I've been a coward my whole life. I remember one time me and my sister were at a bus stop, and these girls started picking on her. And I was just like, all right, I'll see you later when I get home. And I just walked away. I'm a coward. And what happened to pussies in World War II? Did they just go over and get killed right away? Or like, it does make me wonder what would happen to pussies in that situation,
Well, I think maybe some of them got out. Some of them probably maybe didn't make it through basic boot camp, basic training.
That's what I'd like to think. I would not make it through that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think once you get through boot camp, you must have some amount of fucking like stank on you.
But World War II is all hands on deck. So they're letting everyone go. This isn't like they're just letting, and that's where like a lot of pussies either had to man up, but you're right. I mean, he definitely seems very, what do you call it? Not a scratch on him, as a person,
Right. And he's supposed to represent that. That's what I mean. It's like, it's too much of a tool to be used in a movie of like, here's this guy.
Yes. That being said, there's something very interesting. I think with all Spielberg movies, there's a lot of corniness, and then there's this interesting darkness under the corniness. I think that's true for all his movies. And I think one of the interesting things was that coward guy is at the end, there's that terrifying part where he's on the stairs and he can't help the Jewish guy who's getting killed by that Nazi, which is such an awful, like, it's so terrifying when the Nazi has a knife.
Yeah.
And he's just like, shh, while he's bringing the knife in. It's just so terrifying. But then you remember the the coward guy later on, they see the Germans who are the POWs, and he sees the guy he saved. Remember that part?
Yes.
And he shoots him.
Right.
And that was an interesting part to me. That's because you see him being a coward the whole time, but then kind of, even though maybe that he's kind of like, he then at the end shoots someone who's unarmed. He kind of goes against all his principles because he feels like such a coward for not helping the guy. And so he just murders someone kind of.
Right.
who's defenseless. So it's an interesting. I thought that was an interesting dark note at the end of the movie with his character.
Yeah, no, it's interesting, but like I said, it is all very tool-ish. It's all
Yes.
assembled together to do that, which is fine. I just think
giving
he's a
each
little cartoony.
person. It's the thing where you give each character one trait.
Right.
You give each person one thing, and literally Ed Burns, his one thing is just that he's from Brooklyn.
Yes,
that's his whole character trait, that he's just Brooklyn, and that's it. And then there's the Southern sniper who prays before each hit, which seems like a hard thing to do if you're like in the moment, because it seems like it's stalling you each time, like the prayer.
Right. So, I love Barry Pepper. He's a great actor. He's a great character in there. But I don't want to get ahead of ourselves. But Full Metal Jacket, we'll talk about it in a few minutes. But they did a better job of, like, Matthew Modine is like this cool cat, and then in the big moment when the woman's he fucking drops the gun, and it's much more relatable. And then he's saved by this other guy who hasn't seen battle, has been wanting to see battle. It's much more effective, I think.
Full Metal Jacket is just definitely a much more real movie, and also the rapport between the soldiers is real. The rapport in Saving Private Ryan is just, they don't feel like there's something about them that, even though there's like they're killing Nazis and they do fucked up shit, there's something about them that just seems kind of innocent. Do you know what I mean? I guess it's that Norman Rockwell Spielberg thing where they just seem a little innocent in their behavior,
Yeah, and there's great stuff in there. Another thing I just wanted to talk about, like, again, like when I talk about like tools, like, oh, we'll make this unique and fun, with the guy's like shot in the helmet, and then they're like, you're one lucky son of a bitch, and he takes his helmet off and just goes, oh, and they get shot. Like, that's so absurd. I can feel, and this is what I talk about with things, and I'm gonna get shit for, but like, you can feel the writing. I can see the creative process of, like, wouldn't it be memorable if he got shot in the helmet and then he takes his helmet? Like, why would a guy, clearly someone shot him directly in the head, and he's going to take his helmet off and stay in the same position? Like, obviously that person could just shoot again. It's just so you can have that moment of, like,
I'll be honest, I love that part. Get him, people, get that joke.
It just feels like the guy would duck.
I don't accept any criticism in the battle sequence. I think that's I don't know. I mean, like, I guess, but to me, it's also like, maybe it's the writer's hand, but to me, that's the moment where it's like, this is absurdity, this is chaos. This isn't like a movie you're watching. It's like real. You know what I mean? Which is interesting about Saving Private Ryan in general. It's such a Hollywood movie with two action sequences that seem so much like, at least that first action sequence seems so much like a documentary, which is so interesting to me. How I thought that part to me was kind of like, yeah, maybe it's a little clever. I mean, you probably love Apocalypse Now, but they do something even way more contrived than that, where Lawrence Fishburne gets killed, and we'll get to it later, but right when the mother on the letter is like, and I hope you don't get shot right now.
I disagree completely. But that's where it's not real. That's where it takes me out of going back to Saving Private Ryan. That battle sequence is so great. It's just like, that part's not real. What soldier is getting shot in the helmet and then being like, duh? Did he think like, oh, that Nazi must have had one bullet and one bullet only? He would duck and then look at the helmet or whatever. Yeah, and then the guy next to him just goes, you're one lucky son of a bitch. Whoa, lucky.
Yeah, that's a good point. I guess you wouldn't. Yeah, you don't wait to. Yeah, because you don't need to take off your helmet to know if you have a bullet in the head. You can just not die right then.
Yeah, you would duck. You'd be like, oh, what's my helmet? Let me get out of here.
Yeah, but,
to me, the creepiest, most effective scenes in that whole sequence is the underwater bullets, and then the boots stepping on people underneath them.
Terrifying. When he goes underwater and there's like one guy kind of strangling, and then the bullets go through him and you just see them die. It's so terrifying. That's the thing about Spielberg. It's such a sentimental, patriotic movie that's kind of like, really, the views in the movie are just kind of, it's just about sacrifice in America, and it's all about the mythology of America, and it is like a safe message, but then the sequences themselves are so nightmarish, which I feel true for a lot of Spielberg movies. I think there's so much nightmarish shit within this kind of sentimental kind of structure, you know what I mean? Or the sentimental content. And yeah, that opening sequence is just, to me, just so nightmarish. Just, you know what it is? You just feel like you're there. You start thinking, what would have happened if I was there,
Yeah, of course. Exactly. So it's extremely effective in that way. And it is a great movie. I do think it's a great movie. It's just got like silly cheese that's like hard. Like, I have to like look away. It's like douche chills, a lot of it.
Well, the other part that's really just annoying is I feel like Tom Hanks is amazing in it. And he does such a great job of like his humanity be kind of hidden and him kind of like almost being dead inside from all this, but still having this humanity that he's kind of protecting almost.
Yeah.
But the part where he says he's a school teacher, it's a cool reveal that he's a school teacher, but the way they stage that, it's just like, here's my monologue. And then everyone's just like immediately looking at him like he's giving a monologue, which never happens in real life. No one in real life just like starts treating the other person like they're giving a monologue, you know?
Right.
But then not only that, they like line up behind him during it. It's like so like overtly choreographed and just like just a cheesy manner, you know?
Yeah, completely agree. And then it's like,
yeah, that fucking score is the worst. It's like also no movie should ever just end with a picture of the American flag over patriotic music. Like that should not be the end of a movie.
Yeah, I
agree. Like the message of a movie should not just be, they're going to piss off all your right-wing base you've tapped into over the years. But no, yeah, it should, I'm not against people. Obviously people can be patriotic, but it doesn't make for an interesting movie, I guess. It kind of is just like a simplistic thing, you know?
Yes, it feels very simplistic. And yeah, we won, we came in, we won. And, you know, America saved the day, although the invasion of Poland was 3 years before we got involved. And then we got involved directly after Japan was attacked. And
the Russians did most of the work and 20 million of them died. And we pretended like we were the ones who did all the work saving the day when it was mostly them. But, and we also nuked, we also just nuked the country
twice.
Times
two. You ever hear Colin Quinn's bit about Give Him Hell, Harry? It's one of my favorite bits ever.
No, what is it?
They used to call him Harry Truman was known as being kind of like spineless, like he was kind of like a cowardice guy, and they called him Give Him Hell, Harry as a joke. And he's like, oh yeah, give him hell. I will give them literal hell. How do you like that? And they're like, Jesus, Harry, we were just busting your ball. He does.
I mean, what's really fucked up is that there's probably a lot of truth to that. Like, just like if you think about like just the personal manliness of him himself, how much did that play a part into it? You know. Right. But yeah. So it is like, yeah, the patriotism thing. Wait, what were we just talking about? I was about to say something.
American flag. There's not much. You know, they don't talk too much about the duality of war or anything like that.
No, yeah, it definitely does not get complicated. It's ultimately about honor and sacrifice. Oh yeah, and then that's the thing I was gonna say. You know, Tom Hanks gets shot, and then he says, "Earn this," right?
Yeah.
Was he prepared to say that no matter what? Because maybe he should have just said that beforehand, just to get it out. Because I feel like he could have got killed without him saying it.
I'm not sure what you mean exactly.
Well, I feel like he has this message for Matt Damon. You know,
right. Which is a lot of pressure, by the way.
A lot of pressure.
I want to tell Matt Damon, you're enough, man. Like, you don't have to accomplish anything. Just be you.
Well, that's what's kind of funny at the end. He's kind of like paranoid. And like, it's like two ways. He's like, did I earn it? Tell me I'm a good person. There's too much pressure.
Yeah.
That's not Matt Damon, by the way, right?
No, I think that's an old man.
That's not Matt Damon in a bunch of old makeup, right?
No. I don't think they had that ability in 98 or whatever. By the way, Matt Damon was not like a massive star then. He did with Good Will Hunting and Talented Mr. Ripley. I feel like he was still kind of like a budding star.
Well, yeah, no, it definitely wasn't. No one was watching it going, when are they going to get to Matt Damon? You know what I mean? It wasn't that kind of like Apocalypse Now. It's like, when are they going to get to Marlon Brando? You know what I mean? By the way, it's the exact opposite of Apocalypse Now. Apocalypse Now is this really dark, fucked up movie where they're trying to get to this guy to kill him. And in this movie, it's kind of a more positive movie where they're trying to get to this guy to save him. But it's kind of similar. It's like the yin and the yang, you know? But I thought that'd be more profound. No?
No, it's good. I'm just trying to figure out what movie we're going into next. Because I also thought the score, we shit on the score of Saving Private Ryan, and I thought the score of Full Metal Jacket, which I just found out today was done by Kubrick's daughter under an alias.
Oh, really?
Research. Yeah, and that score is so amazing, so minimalist, and you're saying no.
No. Oh, for Apocalypse, for Full Metal Jacket?
Yeah.
Well, you mean like the actual score, not the music, because they have some.
Yeah, like the score. Yes.
I remember. Yeah, the score is like you barely hear it a lot of times, right?
Yeah, it's like a weird synthesizer. Like when they're in the bathroom, it's like that.
Yeah, it's like very. Yeah, it's when they what's it called? What's the soap?
Oh yeah, it's great in there when they haze him.
Yeah, no, it's very disturbing and very subtle. And they also have that "Birds a Word" song, which is very bizarre.
Yeah, and Painted Black is amazing at the end.
I didn't realize that. Let's talk about Full Metal Jacket next.
All right, let's get into it. We're into it.
We're done. Okay. Well, I just want to say one more thing about Saving. Just one more thing. They tell Matt Damon his whole family is dead, And he seems to take it pretty well. But then Ed Burns calls him like an asshole a second later, which seems like a rough thing to say to someone whose entire family just died.
Right.
It seems like you should be off the hook from being called an asshole for at least like a day. Because he's like, all your brothers are dead. Matt Damon starts to cry. He's like, I don't want to leave. And Ed Burns immediately like, hey, asshole. We lost 2 people trying to get you. It's like that's a bit much to someone who just found out their whole family has been murdered or killed, you know?
That is where the movie is effective in that way, though, of like any war depiction does show you like, wow, this is so fucked up. Like, how are these people ever going to recover? What kind of life are they ever going to lead back? It's miraculous that any of these, like, obviously there's like a crazy high suicide rate for Iraq veterans, and it's sort of miraculous that it's not higher, honestly. Like this is so traumatizing. And so the movie does have, obviously, like we talked about in those battle scenes, and just that feeling of like, how do you incorporate back into life? And that's one of the weird things about World War II, which people have been critical about. Oliver Stone, I know, was critical about that movie, of like, people think of, because World War II was like Nazis. So of course, war, we need to fight and kill the Nazis.
Yes.
So people kind of think of like veterans coming back and being heroes, and you did it, but like they had horrible PTSD. I can't even imagine, just because it was a righteous war doesn't mean they didn't have horrible fucking trauma.
That's a great point. Just because that's a great point. And that is something that's kind of a bit of a lie of Saving Private Ryan, which is just like this lie of ending it with someone being really well adjusted and having lived a good life. Yeah, it's a war can be justified, but all war is still extremely absurd and traumatic, you know? And you can't treat, just because there's Nazis, you can't treat this war as like something, it's never good, you know?
Right.
And it's always absurd and awful. And I do think some of Spielberg does express that in the battle sequences themselves, but he doesn't know how to express it thematically, you know?
Right.
And that's what gets lost there, you know? But I guess with Vietnam, it's interesting because now you can, with World War II, it's tough because you don't want to be like, if you say it's too absurd, you look like you're what do you call it? Like, you know, an isolationist or whatever, or you hate Jews or something. But like with Vietnam, the whole thing is a much different type of movie because this is a war we should never have been in. But also real quickly, like, it's interesting watching war movies for me too, because, you know, I think about death all the time. I'm very afraid to die just with normal society, you know?
Right.
I'm death is already terrifying to me just while I'm in my apartment. So like when I think of myself in a war, I'm like, you can like cease to exist at any moment.
Yeah, I felt that way playing paintball. Like everyone played paintball just out of high school, and I remember being pinned down, and like the paint is going like, and I'm like this, like, this is horrible. Like I'm gonna have a welt on my ankle if I get hit.
And also, it hurts, by the way, paintball. I got hit like 5 times, and like my eyes were like I was like crying a little. It's like very painful.
Well, that's the thing with paintball. You never get hit once. No one's ever like, bang, I got him. It's like the guy with the fucking helmet. People are like, boom, 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 boom. That's how you shoot.
Real quick, my buddy, an older friend, kind of a tough guy, was in the Israeli army. He was paintballing in high school with his other kid, and they literally like caught him, made him like take off his helmet, and then they shot him execution style in the back of the head, like point blank.
Fucking horrible.
Yeah, man. I thought it was a funny story, but I guess it is really fucked up.
No, that's funny to you, but Daniel Stern stepping on a nail in a fucking kids movie, it's like sends you over the edge. But a guy getting shot execution style.
Well, what's funny is that the guy just took off his helmet like it's like a real thing. I don't know. But anyway, we'll cut that part out.
No, that's gold.
Going in. All right, let's talk about Full Metal Jacket.
Okay, so Full Metal Jacket is a movie. I mean, I have a podcast named after Full Metal Jacket.
Right.
Full Metal Jacket. You were on it. Full Metal Jacket is a movie I've seen a ton and rewatched it this morning which is a funny thing to wake up and just start watching Full Metal Jacket. But I hadn't watched it in probably at least a year, probably 2 years, maybe a little more. And
I think like 15.
I think it's a masterpiece, honestly. I think it's fucking so good. So many critics and people complain about the second half of the movie. Most people I know don't like the second half, and a lot of critics say it came apart, but I think the second half is fantastic. I do think the first half is better.
Well, that fucking R. Lee Ermey. How do you put R. Lee Ermey?
Lee Arnie or something.
Arlie, he just steals the fucking show. It is like a one-man show, and it's just so good. And also it is hilarious. Like that is like I kind of forgot how funny Full Metal Jacket is. It is legitimately like, I mean, it's awful, but it's legitimately laugh out loud funny.
That's what's amazing about it. It's like a horror movie. I mean, it looks like a horror movie. Like that steady cam around the room when he's fucking walking around. And the lighting, I mean, it's Kubrick, so everything looks fucking beautiful.
Well, it's psychologically really intense too, because something I kind of didn't realize, like, I assume even when you're in a boot camp, there's other people around, there's like the cafeteria and all this, but Kubrick specifically just shows them and the drill sergeant the entire time. There's no one else, there's no cafeteria, so you really physically feel like this drill sergeant is just yelling at you 24/7. And there's really nothing else. And it does create this intense claustrophobic feel in that sequence.
That being said, the one shot I don't like, and I think the whole movie, is like he's kind of yelling into the camera when he punches Matthew Modine, Private Joker, in the stomach.
Oh, yeah.
And then there's one shot. It's the only shot.
It feels like Animal House.
Yeah.
Or I get Stripes or whatever. Yeah. Like,
he's just like yelling into the camera. And I'm like, that one shot, I'm like, oof.
It's a little cartoony. But the part where he goes up to Vincent D'Onofrio for the first time and just says, "Did your parents have any children that survived?"
Yeah.
And the look on Vincent, he had like just the perfectly like that half a retard smile. And he just, it's like such a funny, it was literally like watching a Comedy Central roast. It's like the whole opening. I mean, that's the thing about that drill sergeant. He's just like, I don't know if he has a staff of writers, but he's got some amazing lines.
No, he's amazing. First of all, now I think we're 5 for 5 with retard in the podcast. We've never.
I'm only doing one episode.
And that one, there was a pause. You did say
I actually, you saw me debate it. You saw me like debate and then join the dark side. But like,
or is this might be the 6th episode? Is this the 5th or 6th? I don't even know.
5.
This is 5.
I think so.
All right, but anyways, I think that guy Lee Army or Arnie, whatever the fuck his name is. Him not getting an Oscar nomination is one of the great fucking tragedies in the history of the Academy Award. That's an insane omission, and I feel like the Academy is such a bunch of fucking douches that they were like, military, I don't know, Marine.
Especially, I mean, I get now, like, we've seen him in everything else, and we realize now that's all he could do. But at the time, like, you didn't know that, and you're like, that's just, like, incredible. You know what I mean? So it's a performance that he was even more deserving of an Oscar at that time. Where you're like, this is an incredible actor, you know?
I'm sure you know the story, but he was supposed to be a consultant. And he was a consultant on Apocalypse Now, too. And he's in Apocalypse Now.
He is in Apocalypse Now. I was going to say, he's in a helicopter at one point.
Yes. And then the guy in the helicopter in Full Metal Jacket who says, simple, just don't lead him so much. That guy was supposed to be the drill instructor.
Oh, what did that line mean? I didn't get that real.
It means they run slower.
Don't lead them so much.
Yeah, well, you've never been an athlete at any point, but
no.
If you're throwing a football to somebody who's running across the field, you throw it ahead of them. You lead them so they can run and the ball catches up. So like if you're shooting at somebody,
he shoots like you shoot where they're going to be.
Yes, exactly.
And you don't have to do that as much with
that as much with women and children. So basically,
that's a fucked up thing to say.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I mean, he's executing civilians as they're flying around. That's the.
I don't get sports references. I thought it was like lead, like let shoot it. Yeah, but anyway. Oh, so that was the original drill sergeant,
right?
Who actually I thought was kind of a bad actor, a little.
I thought he was pretty good.
Yeah, he kind of did like an evil laugh at one point. I don't know.
He is evil, and I love that it's fade. I love that he says "ain't war hell" as it's fading away to the next scene, which I thought was
the scene is great, but I feel like they could have maybe gone. I'm saying I agree with Stanley Kubrick's choice to. He's not that great of an actor. The consultant got the job, so he can't be that good. He can't be that good if the fucking consultant was like, let's.
So going back to, I mean, like that guy, Lee, whatever the fuck his name is, Harvey Oswald. I mean, that's like one of the great performances because how is that not one of the great performances of all time? He's convincing. I mean, he is that guy. Like
it's also different. Yeah. It's also different than I remembered. Like I remembered him being, it's an amazing performance. It deserved one of the great mistakes ever since, The Pianist didn't win Best Picture. But like, because we talked about that,
Fargo, Lost in the English Patient.
Yeah, the Oscar is mostly just a series of mistakes. But
So was your life.
but I didn't remember, like, I do, like, in my head I was like, he's a really mean authoritarian, the drill sergeant, and he is, but he's also like hilariously vulgar, which is a weird contradiction in a way, because he's like, on one hand he's like, you believe in God and the country and you do everything right, and in the next moment he's like, I like Eskimo pussy. You like
You're fucking up the lines, but yeah, no, I mean, I thought that today too. He's like, do you believe in the Virgin Mary? I bet you would fuck a guy in the ass and not even give him a reach around. It's amazing. And that speaks to the hypocrisy of war, of military, of all that stuff. You know?
Yeah. Well, even at one point says, what does he say? He says, God's got a hard on for Marines. He's like trying to be like, have a religious view, but he's talking about God having an erection.
Right.
Which I assume is blasphemous.
I guess, yeah.
I mean, to say he's
I don't know.
I assume you're not supposed to talk about God being hard.
By the way, some guy commented about, because you were like, you're Christian, right? And I was like, I guess. I don't know. And he was like, why don't people ever just say yes? I'm like, I do think being Christian is nuanced. Am I crazy about that? Like, I don't believe in Christ. I don't worship Christ. I've never been to church.
I think it is nuanced. And, well, I think with Judaism, if you're like born Jewish or kind of Jewish or whatever, I think Christianity, I guess the idea is it's kind of like a belief more so than like a ethnicity. But I think the way I was asking was, I wasn't clear about that. I meant, how were you raised with religion, I guess.
Yeah, that's why the guy, I mean, I don't want to get into the comments because this will be a long show. You've gotten some doozies, but at that one I was like, am I crazy? Like, I think Christianity, I'm like, I don't know. Like, I guess he wants me to be like, yes, I'm a Christian, but I'm like, I don't think about Christ. I don't worship Christ.
Well, I don't think you are. I mean, you're not a religious person.
Yeah, I would say I'm not a Christian.
You're not a Christian. That's not how I meant it. I just meant like you practice Christmas or whatever. But
yeah, we practice. I mean, I never get it right. But I mean, I buy Christmas gifts, but that, we don't go like, oh, like sing and whatever.
Yeah, you're not a freak. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, I'm not a loser.
Not a weirdo. But yeah. I mean, it's a hilarious character. It's authoritarian, but also just fucking very, very just a good. That guy could have a lot of talent in comedy writing. You know what I mean? He's got some great lines.
Yeah, I think, and I was reading about it too. Like, one of the few guys that Kubrick ever let improvise, and also one of the only people ever that would do 2 or 3 takes and they would move on. Like, Kubrick, obviously known for doing 300 takes.
That's the greatest compliment ever. Kubrick going like, we got it.
Yeah,
like that's like Kubrick did, I believe, with Shelley Duvall, where Jack Nicholson chases her up the stairs with a baseball bat, which is a hard scene to do. He made her do that 127 times.
Yeah,
he made her act like her life, like she was terrified for her life 127 times. So that was the other question. It is improvised, right? Like, that's a lot of his own shit, right?
I think so. I think a lot of that is probably stuff he heard, because he really did that and was a Marine and fought in Vietnam, which is fascinating too, because you get in those weird things where you're like watching of these guys be trained to go to Vietnam, and then this guy that's in the movie was actually in Vietnam. So it starts to get interestingly layered.
And it does feel real. It feels like a very real movie. And what was I going to say? Also, another hilarious part where during the bathroom sequence, when he comes out of his room, he's in his underwear, Arlie Ernie, but he's still wearing his hat. I just thought that was like just hilarious. Like he either sleeps with his hat or he just immediately gets. But just him in the hat and the boxers.
Well, like I think he's naked without it. That's the drill instructor hat.
Yeah,
without that, he's not the drill instructor. He's just a fucking asshole in his underwear. He needs his hat.
It's a tough. That first 30 minutes is a tough thing to watch. You feel yourself becoming inhuman.
But it is as effective as any horror movie to me. Like, to me, it's scarier than any fucking like Insidious or whatever the fuck baby's a possessed movie, because you put yourself in there. And another thing, you talk about being a coward. Like, I've been afraid of heights when I was a kid. Not now, because I'm not a fucking nerd, but like that obstacle, I remember watching that and being like, you could die. If you fall off that, you'll fucking die. And then he's like, if you fall off, I would fucking love it. And I remember thinking as a kid, like, I couldn't do, like, that movie used to make me look away more than any other fucking scary
movie. How do you think I feel? I was a fat kid. I was Gomer Pyle. Like, that was like me. And by the way, he's not that fat, by which I'm saying.
No, he's
kind of looks similar.
He's 1968 fat.
He's 1968 fat. He is not modern fat. I actually think he looks pretty good.
Yeah, he's also like he's Paris Island fat. That's for sure.
Well, he's definitely fat for. Yeah, he's definitely boot camp fat. But which, by the way, if you're really fat, you still go to. They just put you right in there with everyone else.
Yeah, you gotta try to get it. They PT you until you fucking.
It seems unfair because what people don't realize about being fat, which is very unsympathetic, is that it's actually harder what he's doing than other people. It's as if those other people had like a giant backpack on, you know what I mean, while they're doing it. It actually is more intense for him. So it's very unfair. I mean, I'm not saying they're supposed to be fair, but that is like a much harder thing to do when you're fat, you know?
Yeah. This is where you're gonna get the comments. They're gonna be like, fuck you, fatty. This is the Marines. And
I just think if they force a fat person to go into the Marines, I think they should have his own, like, let him get in shape on his own beforehand.
Right.
It's just not fair to just throw him right in there, you know?
By the way, another great that opening sequence, one of the great opening sequences ever, of just everyone's hair getting shaved.
Beautiful.
Music, amazing. I mean,
beautiful metaphor for like them losing their humanity right away with that little touch and just that first gesture of them looking all the same. It's a beautiful opening. It's like understated. Like all the other Vietnam movies have such big openings. And there's something very understated. There's actually something very understated about the whole movie. Kubrick is very epic in movies, but did this movie seem like a much smaller movie in a way? More to a smaller scale.
It's also a bit simpler, like, and this isn't my original thought, but like just whatever, historically, whatever, like it's the least sort of dissected and broken down movie. Like there's the least analysis for that movie, other than maybe the early movies, but like nobody's watching it being like, what does this mean? Where 2001, there's all kinds of crazy different theories, same with The Shining and all this stuff. So it's much less diagnosed or whatever the fuck word I'm looking for than those.
I actually was interested in something at the end that is kind of interesting to me, or like a little complicated. Is that Matthew Modine? They're going to let that work. Can we get to the end, or should we talk a little more?
Yeah, sure. Go to the end.
Well, they're going to shoot. They're going to leave that woman, which, by the way, is a great part. One of the issues I kind of, and we'll talk about this Apocalypse Now, is I feel like a lot of Vietnam movies act like Vietnam is horrible, but then they never humanize any of the Vietnamese people. They're just bodies that get mowed down, you know? So I thought the end of Full Metal Jacket was a really striking moment to show her, you know what I mean? As like a real person, which I don't think you ever really see in Apocalypse Now, but we'll get to that in a second. But like they're going to let her just rot in there, right?
Right.
And then he shoots her.
Right.
Which is kind of a mercy moment of him.
Yes.
It's almost like he's not losing his humanity in that moment.
Right.
But
yeah.
By killing someone, it makes him, because in the next scene, he's just joining them with the Mickey Mouse song and saying, I'm no longer afraid. And he doesn't seem to have that conflict anymore, which is an interesting moment to show that he did something merciful, but that led to him losing his humanity still.
Exactly. And that's the sequence, that last sequence or two sequences is what makes it like a masterpiece to me, because the first 45 minutes is when they're in boot camp is all just masterful, like unbelievable. It's a horror movie. It's psychological. It's hilarious. There's so much going on. It's beautiful. And
it's showing you something that you're not seeing in other war movies, which is it's showing you the system itself and how they have to like really turn these people into murderers. And it shows you something systemic that you don't see in a lot of other Vietnam movies.
And you can watch it happen. And also like the drill instructor celebrating Lee Harvey Oswald and Charles Smith or whatever his name is hilarious.
The movie is straight up satire at times, I feel like.
Yeah.
Like it's straight up, like it's almost a little bit of Dr. Strangelove at times.
Yeah, yeah. So that's really funny. But so then, and the way they show him shooting her, his face changes. He finally channels like a real war face, which he was practicing earlier. And it's also interesting. They don't really show him kill her. They just show his face, and you can see his shoulder move a little bit, which is an interesting choice that could be discussed as well. But the feeling of he's the one that's taking mercy on her and also murdering her at the same time.
And yet he's taking mercy when they aren't. And yet that leads to this next scene where he is just kind of, he's joined them. He's completely joined them. And he's, they're doing the Mickey Mouse song, which is this disturbing, image of a loss of innocence. And and they're all singing it together. And he says in the narration, I'm no longer afraid. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's become that murderer. So it is an interesting, maybe that's something that should be talked about more, than some of the stuff in Apocalypse Now. It is like an interesting contradiction at the end, or a weird thing, you know.
One of the great closing dialogues ever, and it reminded me of so many things, like struggled with drugs, struggled with alcoholism, or any kind of existential crisis. That feeling of then the line, "I am in a world of shit, but I'm alive and I'm not afraid anymore," is, but by the way, stolen from Home Alone. I'm not afraid anymore.
I mean, I guess. I mean, yeah. Oh,
Home Alone came afterwards, but just thought that would get a big laugh. Sorry. But I'm in a world of shit, but I'm alive. I mean, that's like, relatable now today. And the not being afraid is like, maybe he's just in the moment, and that's why he's not afraid. Now he's living his life in the moment because he's seen such hell. And as long as he's not in that moment of trying to kill this woman, maybe I'm present. But also,
but don't you feel like we're watching something bad in that moment?
What do you mean? When they're singing M-I-C-K-E-Y?
Yeah, and like I don't feel like Kubrick is looking at him at that last moment as kind of like he's like, yeah, I mean, I get it. I see what you're saying. He has overcome something, but he's lost something in the process.
Well, and partly I'm not afraid is that like I'm okay with dying because fucking this is my life is horrific. I've murdered somebody, and like I talked about in the last movie, like how are these people going to go home? Like how do you ever go home and recover from any of this?
Yeah, no, it's they didn't. That's what happened. They did not recover, and they did not get help by the country.
Right. But the singing the Mickey Mouse song is just fucking amazing, and it's beautiful, and that slow fade to black followed by Paint It Black by the Stones is just tremendous.
Yeah, I mean, I guess so. Just talking about it, I guess for you the ending, and maybe you're right. Maybe I'm too extreme about it because part of me thought, well, he's doing something merciful, and then they're kind of saying it put him into that, because the whole thing is they're taking away their individuality, right? And they're just making them all, the same and all falling in line. And part of me saw that ending as, even though he shot her to take her out of her mercy, somehow by killing someone, it did allow him to just kind of lose his individuality and join the group. And, and so I don't even know what to take away from that. You know what I mean? It's such but maybe it's a complicated, maybe on some level he overcomes something important, but also lost something, and it's not black or white, like that he's completely fallen into some kind of evil at the end. Do you see it as him falling into some kind of evil at the end?
I don't know about evil. I had another thought that I don't want to lose, but I don't know about evil.
Or not evil, but the thing the thing that the movie is talking about, which is this idea of losing your humanity, become part of a killing machine.
Yeah, and he's not the same. And also the fact that like it's so relatable that he's using humor throughout to deal with this stuff. Right off the bat in the drill sergeant, he's making a joke immediately. And then he's making jokes when, War Animal or Animal Hawk, whatever the fuck the guy's name is, Animal Mother is like going to fight him. He starts going with jokes. And then he's making jokes and throughout all this stuff. And then that's a great moment, too, where Cowboy's like, shut the fuck up. Where he's like, what are we lost? That's a great moment. And so, like, he's no longer using that as a tool. He's lost that in the end.
Right. He's lost that. That's like his unique. Yeah, that's his individuality. The peace sign with the Born to Kill sign. Right. Yeah, he's joined the ranks. He's lost it, but he lost it through doing something merciful, which is an interesting last moment to have. And you don't really see that typically in a movie. You know what I mean? In every other movie, it's usually killing it's usually doing the the non-merciful thing that leads you into that.
Right. And I also wonder too, and this is just the fun of Kubrick movies, is that he gave so little with them and then put so much thought into all of them. But I also wondered if them all singing the Mickey Mouse song is also about the brainwashing of American lives in TV. Like these kids are all watching the same thing on TV. They all know the song by heart because they all watch the same TV program. So they were being programmed, maybe not to kill, but programmed.
The conformity was already there, and you had something to work off. The conformity was already there from the beginning. Yeah, I think that's true. I mean, I definitely think it's not just about war. I think it is about just people being programmed to work together and lose their individuality, which is true for any aspect of society. Yeah, I think it works like that for sure. And then also, of course, it's just like a powerful image of the contrast, the loss of innocence, and the contrast of this, because they are children in that moment too. You know what I mean?
Right.
And in a way, they're kind of maybe like him in moments, kind of ironically singing that song, but also becoming the thing. You know what I mean? It's like ironically aware of what's happening, but it's still happening at the same time. You know?
Right. And unlike, you know, Vietnam, Platoon, where it kind of ends with, which we're not going to get too into because we're taking so much time and we didn't get to rewatch it. But like that ends with like Chris is going home. Chris Taylor, Charlie Sheen is going home. But this movie, Full Metal Jacket, like so many war movies, they're just marching on to the next battle. Like Private Joker could die the next day. They're not all going home now.
It's a very dark movie.
But I just want to say this about Platoon. You didn't get a chance to rewatch it. I didn't either. I've seen it a lot. Platoon is interesting because it came out the year before Full Metal Jacket, which I think affected like
it overshadowed it.
It overshadowed it, and it won Best Picture and all this stuff. But I like that movie, and all the Vietnam veterans said it was the closest to accurate because Oliver Stone was there, and they said it nailed it the most. But I think
did they know a character like Willem Dafoe who was just an overt Jesus symbol that they hit you over the head with every moment?
Yeah, and then the bad guy has a scar.
Maybe Vietnam vets just have really bad taste in movies.
Well, that's what I was going to say, is that it's so melodramatic. I do think it's a great movie, and I enjoy it, but like there's some serious like melodrama in that movie.
Willem Dafoe, like when he's like doing the Jesus look and they're shooting him, it goes on for, it's like a dance move, and it goes on for like 10 minutes. Like, do you get it? Jesus. Do you get it? He's Jesus. Tom Berenger's the devil. He's Jesus. You get it? Oliver Stone sucks and he's an idiot. He's a moron. And this is so much better. But you know, you can't trust Vietnam vets. My friend uncle's a mobster, right? Or was a mobster, right?
Your uncle?
No, a friend's uncle was a mobster, right?
Okay.
Like a serious mobster in the mob. And you know what his favorite mobster movie was? Or he said the most accurate?
Oh God.
And he hated Sopranos. You would love him. He hated Sopranos.
Oh, God bless him.
He didn't think Sopranos was accurate at all. The thing he thought was most accurate, Gotti.
Oh, wow.
The one with, not the John Travolta one, the other awful one was Armand Assante. So I'm just saying, maybe the people involved don't always have the best insight.
Well, I don't know the Vietnam vets were like, this movie's amazing. I think they just said like he got the feeling and the dialogue and all that shit. And there's great effective scenes in there with the bugs and everything. But like the Tom Berenger character is like, he's literally talking like this. Like it's like,
yeah, it's not exactly, you're not, I mean, Willem Dafoe's great, but you're not exactly watching the greatest actors. You know, you got Tom Berenger and Charlie Sheen.
The cast of Major League.
I will say this about war movies too. You know how like people complain about how there's most movies back then, there's like hardly any black roles. War movies, the one time where you get a decent amount of black roles, I feel like, where you wouldn't have them in other, you know, mainly because we sent them all to die. But
yeah, I think it was like a lot of black, extremely disproportionate. But black people were mad about Platoon because none of the officers are black, and the 3 black people in Platoon are all depicted as cowards. I was just reading that today.
Oh, really? Well, isn't it Forrest Whitaker?
Oh yeah, he's in there. Yeah, I confused Forrest Whitaker and Lawrence Fishburne.
I do too. That's not a racist thing, right?
I don't think so. They're actors of like the same ilk. They look similar in some ways.
Yeah, maybe it's racist. I mean, one literally has a lazy eye, which you think would distinguish him from the other.
Yeah, but this is I always push back on the racist thing because I'm like, I confuse tons of white people all the time. Like
that's true.
I mean, like nonstop, especially in comedy.
It's not a racist thing. I think sometimes it's hard to tell, especially if you're a different group. It is hard to sometimes tell a lot. It's just a fact. It's just visual. And you know, Asian people are confusing us, I'm sure. So what the fuck?
Yeah. Also, when I look at them, I'm like, oh yeah, that's Lawrence Fishburne. That's Forrest Whitaker. I'm not like, I can't tell the difference because they're black. I'm just like, they're both like.
If you couldn't tell the difference between like Michael Jordan and Kevin Hart, then you'd be racist.
Yeah, I also, isn't racism like disliking somebody based on their skin color? Not being like, oh, I thought you were this other person. Like, how is that racism? That's not like, getting someone's name wrong isn't like racism.
Right, yeah. No, that's a good point. But wait, what are we talking about? We're talking about
Platoon. We're brushing over Platoon just to get to Apocalypse Now.
I hate Oliver Stone. Vietnam vets have terrible movie tastes. No, I'm joking. I'm not big into Stone in general. I just think his symbolism is overt and he's always hitting you on the head. You know.
I think JFK is one of the best movies ever. But yeah, The Doors is a little silly. Platoon's got some silliness.
JFK doesn't have silliness.
I mean, there's silliness in that there's like a gay guy in a wig doing coke and stuff, but
it's also just wrong. It's just, I mean, whatever. It's fine.
This
But
is
I'm
a
just saying
whole
it
other
is
debate.
wrong. Okay, fine. But it's just incorrect. It's a whole movie that's incorrect.
Yeah, I mean, they're throwing out conspiracies
that aren't true. Like Lee Harvey Oswald killed him. He worked alone. It wasn't a conspiracy. And I actually feel like JFK now would probably be a little, considering conspiracy theories have ruined this country. I feel like it'd be hard to watch it now, you know?
Yeah, I guess so. I just love it. But we're not talking about that today.
Well, we'll do it another time. Yeah. Let's talk about Apocalypse Now, which I assume is one of you.
Oh, God. Oh, God. I can't even believe. I'm already blown away that you're going to start doing your thing that you do.
Well, I'm conflicted because I'm not going to just be here to be like, Apocalypse Now is a piece of shit. I'm not like insane.
Okay.
But I do think it is, I think it has great moments, and I think the ending is bad. I think Marlon Brando is not a character, and I think it just all falls apart at the end completely.
Well, let me ask you this first and foremost. Have you watched Hearts of Darkness?
Yes, which I think is a better movie.
I actually agree.
I think the movie, because here's the thing about Apocalypse Now. It's so much about Coppola's ego himself. And it's so much like a metaphor for his own like ego making this giant movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so Hearts of Darkness really captures that, you know?
Yes. So if the folks at home haven't seen Hearts of Darkness, which is a documentary that Eleanor Coppola made based on like the making of it, it's one of the best movies of all time. Louis C.K. said it changed his entire life, his entire approach to his career. It's
hilarious, and it's just like insane, and like I don't know. It is hard. Like watching Apocalypse Now is interesting because like there's so much ego involved in the movie to me that like makes it hard for me to fully connect to.
Well, part of it's about ego, but by the way, Good Will Hunting is one of the things we talked about in one of the episodes, Boston movies, and there's an allusion to Hearts of Darkness in Good Will Hunting. Do you remember?
No.
Casey Affleck, when they first meet Minnie Driver and he's sitting there, he goes, I swallowed a bug, and he walks away, which is a line when Marlon Brando is improvising, and he goes, I swallowed a bug.
Right, but couldn't he have just swallowed a bug? Like, I feel like it's like the Home Alone thing, and then that's just kind of like or was it directly a reference?
Oh, it's directly a reference.
Oh, they said
sure. Yeah.
They said
it couldn't not be. Like once I saw Hearts of Darkness, I'm like, oh, that's a line from Good Will Hunting, because the line doesn't make sense in Good Will Hunting. They're sitting at the bar, and Casey Affleck is just sitting there, and he goes, I swallowed a bug, and everyone wants to know what the fuck he's talking about. And it's a reference to that movie.
I didn't want you to be, like that woman the representative was like, Hitler was right about one thing. Children are the future. It's like other people also could have said that, you know?
Right.
But you think, I can see that. Yeah, that part of swallowed bug. Well, Hearts of Darkness also just reveals how it kind of makes Apocalypse Now a little worse, doesn't it? Just because Marlon Brando was just rambling a bunch of nonsense and they just used what they thought worked.
It takes from it, but so yeah.
The swallowed a bug part, if people don't know, we should probably explain. Like that's them filming him just riffing some kind of speech at the end, and then in the middle they're just going, I swallowed a bug.
And there's one moment, and everyone should watch Hearts of Darkness because it's amazing. But there's a moment in the movie where they're filming him. He's just improvising because he didn't memorize anything. They didn't have an ending. It's all fucked up. And he literally just says, I can't think of anything more to say. He's like the death, a spider crawls in the blade of a knife. And I can't think of any of the
They don't have a character there. So they just have him just like, they're trying to like riff him into a character. And he's supposed to be really thin too. And then Marlon Brando showed up like extremely fat.
Yeah.
Like they asked him to be thin, and he showed up way fatter than they even thought he would be if he didn't lose weight.
And then Coppola's like, well, maybe we'll work with that. Like he's just been sitting there eating mangoes. And I'm like, you can't get that fat eating mangoes. I'm sorry.
It seems like Marlon Brando was being so difficult that they told him to be thin for the role, and he went out of his way to be fat, like almost like as a way to be a difficult actor.
Well, that's an amazing scene in Hearts of Darkness, which we're just talking about that movie now. But when Coppola's on the phone, it is better. But when he's on the phone, he's like, I'll just get Nicholson or Pacino. I'll get it. Like he's like, or Warren Beatty. It's amazing. He's just like Rolodexing these huge stars. But let's get to Apocalypse Now because.
But I do think like Apocalypse Now is trying to be about like the Vietnam War and the ego of Americans and the ego of the white person, but it is Coppola's ego the whole time in the movie. You know what I mean? Of him just creating this giant vision that's like insane and it's all over the place. I don't know. To me, it's more about him than anything about Vietnam.
Well, that's what's so amazing about the movie is it's so layered, and it is about Martin Sheen's character, Willard. Captain Willard's journey up the river is his own journey into his own psyche,
right?
Which is amazing, and he's confronting his own ego in Brando or whatever it is, his demon.
And yet, I don't think they connect at the end. You want to feel this when he gets to the end. You want to feel that he has this temptation of being Brando, you know. And I don't feel it. I know that's what they're trying to say, but they don't seem like connected at all. I just think the Marlon Brando character falls apart. You just don't really get what he's about. You know.
Yes, I do agree.
Right?
It's difficult to kind of understand because his dialogue is so weird, and he's also
not talking about being God. He's just talking about like you think he's like good. He's talking like he becomes a god. And you think he's going to talk about that, but instead he just goes like Vietnam is terrible. Like I've seen terrible things. He honestly the shit he says, some of it just seems kind of normal.
Yeah, I've thought that before about the movie, and now you're just ruining one of my favorite movies. But I have had some of these thoughts.
I'm bringing your thoughts up.
I have had these thoughts before where it's like, I don't see any method at all. And you're like, he actually doesn't seem that mad. Like he's reading a book. He's just kind of sitting there.
He's reading poetry. He's reading T.S. Eliot. And then he does say like, everything he said for the most part he's just like, you got to lose your judgment. And also, he's not really... I mean, I know what he's doing is crazy, but him himself, they don't present as a crazy person, which I found. And they don't present as a cult leader by any means. Like, you don't see why people would worship him. They don't explain that at all. To the point where it feels like a little racist, like they're just having these Cambodians just worship him, but like they don't show that he had charm. It's almost like they're just assuming, well, you throw a white guy in front of a bunch of Cambodians, they'll just start like praying to him.
Well, yeah, I agree. Like they don't, it actually does seem like there's just a village of people who were living there. And then there's also just this fat bald guy that's letting stay there. I do agree. That is a little bit how it's depicted, but you have to, because the buildup is so good. I just assume like, okay, a ton of shit happened before we got there. Like he murdered a ton of them. There are heads everywhere. There's
he's done crazy shit. His actions are crazy, but I just don't get a sense of the character at all. I think that's partly because they didn't have one. I think they were just like, read some poetry, make up a couple of your own lines, and we'll get it. You know what I mean? And to me, also at a certain point, because they don't explain, also him being really fat, I do think hurts it also. Like, I mean, I guess I was about to say, there's no fat people that everyone looks up to in a cult, but obviously Trump is fat, but like, I don't know. He's so fat. It's just, I don't know. It doesn't seem, there doesn't seem like that demagogue quality to him. He just seems like he's kind of a recluse who just reads poetry. Like you don't get a sense of it. And it does feel a little racist at times. I honestly do feel, you're going to call me like a woke little bitch or whatever, but
I'm not. The comments are. I'm going to politely say that.
Well, some of the things, like in Full Metal Jacket at the end, you have this woman, you see her as a real person. You never see the Vietnamese as real people in Apocalypse Now. They're just people to get mowed down by. And at a certain point, it's like, I want to see, if you want to show me the horrors of Vietnam War, try to humanize some of these people who were slaughtered on some level. But instead, what I see is the white person just killing a lot of people. And it's still being, even though it's a criticism of white people or the white evil, it's like almost still in the perspective of them being more important. You know what I mean? It's almost like at the end, it's saying all white people can easily become gods. They just have to sit in front of these Cambodians, but they should choose not to. But it's in their power, but they got to rise above their natural power to become gods.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying?
Great speech. I would say that. So that's not what this movie's about. This movie's about these guys on this boat, specifically Willard and these people, and the movie's shot from their perspective, and they don't give a fuck about Vietnam. So if you want that perspective, you got to watch Ken Burns' Vietnam, which is also one of the great movies in history and really, truly humanizes. They have interviews with the Viet Cong, and it's It's unbelievable. It's unbelievably good, and that's an amazing film.
I guess I feel like Full Metal Jacket's the same way, and yet they have that breakthrough at the end where there is this moment. I guess I would like to have seen it broken through a little at certain moments. Instead, I just see them shot and shot. They're just bodies. They're either bodies to be mowed down or bodies to be worshiping.
But
at the end.
don't you see that's what they were to the people fighting the war? I mean, that's not like there's not a lot of 17-year-old kids from America that flew to Vietnam and they were like, let's get to know these folks. They were like, and again, they're fucking beating into them. That's Charlie. These are gooks. The gooks are trying to kill us. And if we don't kill them, America's going to be communists. You don't want a communist country, not dissimilar to what's going on now. But
well, yes, that's true. And I agree with you on some sense, but the movie is not like a realistic movie also. I mean, it's a very surreal movie. And I don't know, to me, it almost felt like the movie does have a clear message though. It's not objective, right? I mean, there's a message to the movie. And to me, the message ended up becoming when you kill a lot of Vietnamese people, it's bad, but it's not bad because you're killing Vietnamese people. It's not bad for them. It's bad because it's really bad for your mental health. That's what like the message was to me. It's bad killing all the, I don't know. I wish I would have seen a little of them being humanized. Instead, by the end, they're just all worshiping Marlon Brando. And you're like, who are these people? And we're just supposed to naturally assume they're going to worship him because they're fucking Asian.
Well, also, first of all, the people in Marlon Brando's compound, those not like Viet Cong. That's like,
no, that's Cambodians.
Yeah, there's like this Cambodian like tribe basically there. And again, I think the movie's from the perspective of these American GIs who are not humanizing the Viet Cong. I mean, that's what it's about. They've all gone a little fucking mad. And so these are just enemies. They're just killing.
I agree. And you're making a very valid point. And usually I wouldn't be from this perspective. You know, I'm the kind of guy who's like, I would never be the guy who's like, Scorsese, they make Wolf of Wall Street, them, you know, it looked fun or whatever. It's subjective. It's trying to capture their experience. I agree with that. But I guess I don't think it's objective in the sense that I think what's conflicting is it tries to criticize American military a lot in the movie, but it also kind of makes the American military look really cool and powerful and really cool in a way that almost feels like it kind of likes it a little, you know?
Well, I think that's part of the thing too. Like Kilgore, who we haven't even talked about, who's one of the great characters of all time, Robert Duvall,
who's so much more interesting than Brando. That's the other thing. Like Kilgore is, it's almost like you want to have Kilgore at the end. You know what I mean? Like,
it is interesting. That is the best sequence, and he's the most fascinating character. And that whole sequence, the Flight of the Valkyries sequence and the opening sequence. I mean, so we went straight to the end.
I know.
The whole opening.
The opening sequence is incredible. This is the end is incredible.
This is the end. The slow motion napalm is like unbelievable. One of the coolest things in one of the best openings ever. The fade in of the jungle. Opening. This is the end, and the fucking
incredible.
Like one of the best pieces of filmmaking in history.
There's some incredible visuals in it. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not insane. Like there's incredible.
And then I mean, Martin Sheen having the breakdown, and also huge laughs too. I mean, great moments. The beginning is better than the end, unfortunately. But when he's like,
"This is the beginning," and
it's when they open the door and they go, "You okay?" He goes, "What's it look like?" I mean, that's like one of the great comedic lines ever. And then they put him in the cold shower, and he goes, "Ah!" and it cuts to the propeller. That's just amazing. Like,
great shot. Yeah,
brilliant. And
I will say his narration. I forgot how much it sounds like a private eye from a film noir the whole time.
Well, I think that's probably an influence that's in there.
Yeah, it's definitely the intention.
The worst acting in the movie goes to Harrison Ford, who clears his throat one too many times. It's so bad. It doesn't make sense. Like he's literally like, and go up there and kill him. Like it's so over the top. Like I'm giving crazy news.
Yeah, I'm giving crazy news, but I'm just a bureaucrat. Yeah, he thinks bureaucrat is just like clearing your throat a bunch. Yeah.
Yeah, but that whole sequence of Martin Sheen, who was actually bottoming out as an alcoholic, he was actually hitting bottom. He's drunk in the
which is insane. Like this movie is like full of actual meltdowns being captured on film.
That's what's so amazing is it's so fucking layered. And he's 38 years old. He had a heart attack. He's my age. He has a heart attack in the middle of the taping, which is
wasn't Coppola like taunting him during it? Where he's like, "You're just a pretty boy actor. You have no content." And then he's cried, and they're like, "Roll film."
Right. He's literally bottoming out on film. So that's amazing. And there's so many great sequences up the river, which is again a metaphor. So it's pretty fucking amazing.
There's amazing stuff, but I guess I don't fully. Yeah, I don't. I guess I didn't fully connect to a lot of the stuff between him and Kurtz, which is the kind of a central thing in the movie. You know, at the end, you want to see his temptation to become a god, right? Isn't that the point? I mean, isn't that the whole point of having? I totally forgot Scott Glenn is in the movie, by the way.
Yeah,
for like no lines. But isn't that the point of Scott Glenn? Like that could be him, or he could be the god, and you just don't. Martin Sheen's another one who does. You don't. You know what it is too. You don't see his temptation to be crazy. I know he has a meltdown in the beginning, and I know he's like kills the one woman, but you don't really see him slipping in any way to make it feel like you're watching this character battle, just struggle. You don't see this internal struggle that the movie's trying to showcase, right?
Yeah, I see your point. I'm like,
he's actually very self-aware and aware of the craziness around him.
Yes, I agree, and he's got like great analogies and insight and all this stuff. So
yeah, the movie has two things going, and they're both don't really connect. They try to. There's the horror of war, and then there's the temptation to be a god. And the movie definitely captures the horror of war, but it definitely does not go into the temptation to be a god. You know, Marlon Brando seems generally upset by the horror of war. You never see that transformation to like, I enjoy killing people. It makes me feel good. And you don't see Martin Sheen really feeling that need either. He's cold and he kills that woman, but even that is just more like protocol, not temptation to be a god. So I guess that's the part that gets lost in the movie.
Yeah, it's interesting. And the crew actually grows more. You see them going mad actually quite a bit more. The surfer guy is a great example of going fucking crazy.
Who also, wasn't he also on acid during it? It's all like real. Like
Yeah.
But and they killed that cow, right? That's clearly a real cow, right?
Yeah, well, they talk about that in Hearts of Darkness too. That like they were just like, let's just film this crazy fucking sacrifice these people do, and we'll use that as the movie.
Which is a fucked up thing at the end because you're like, that's a real cow.
Oh yeah,
getting killed. Like they can't say no animals were hurt during this movie.
Yeah, no, it is.
They have to be like a cow was definitely hurt.
But they're like, it wasn't hurt by us. It was hurt
by us, by these savages.
But no, I do think also all of that being said, I think you're making good points, but visually, musically, the journey up the fucking river is just
journey up the river is great, and it's like it's always cool having people on a boat going on a journey. That's just a cool thing.
And it is a great metaphor for America's involvement in the war. It's a great metaphor for artistry. It's a great metaphor for even going to therapy. It's for going into your own mind. That the minefield that is our own mind. I think it's one of the best metaphorical movies for that.
And to me, the metaphor ends up being more of Coppola going mad himself, right? That to me, it almost becomes more self-reflexive in that point of him going mad making this movie. Because this was a director who basically everyone was like, you just made the greatest movie ever.
Two of them.
Two of the greatest movies ever. You can do no wrong. You know, this is the ego. He is Kurtz, right? You can do no wrong. You get all the accolades. And so this is him contending with that, contending with that in the movie. And it is so much ego of like, this movie goes way over budget and they're filming so much like real emotions and manipulating, like, it's just the ego of like this filmmaker,
Right.
Which is what the documentary kind of captured what the movie's about more than maybe the movie did.
Yeah. No, I genuinely do think Hearts of Darkness is the better movie. I mean, it's like a perfect movie.
Well, I feel the same way. You're gonna say I'm crazy, but I think the best thing that Woody Allen's ever done or the greatest thing in a Woody Allen movie is in Wild Man Blues, the documentary about him, where have you seen it?
Is that the PBS one that Robert Weed did?
No, that's the one where he's his clarinet band.
Oh, no, I don't think I've watched it.
There's a scene with him and his parents that's better than any scene in any Woody, where he's just there and his dad literally tells him, the 2 Academy Awards are like on the shelf and his dad tells him, I think you should have been a pharmacist.
Yeah.
I still think you should have been a pharmacist.
I think we talked about this in the first episode.
Fuck, shit, already repeating. But yeah, like sometimes the documentary, I feel like his wife making a documentary about these egotistical men going crazy is kind of like gets to the truth of it more,
And what an amazing metaphor, by the way. When you hear Francis Ford Coppola, which I want to get into in a second, you hear him talk about that movie. It tells you what show business, what we're up against, folks in show business. He made The Godfather and The Godfather 2, and then made The Conversation, which is also a great movie.
Mm-hmm.
And then they wouldn't let him make this movie. Like Francis Ford Coppola, the studios were like, I don't think so, pal. Nice try. Like he should be able to go, I want to make a movie where a bunch of adults fuck a ton of kids. They should be like, okay, here's the money. Like, well, it's insane.
You hear that with Scorsese all the time. One classic after another. And then anytime he comes out with a movie, you read about it. Like, he's been trying to get this movie made for 42 years. Like, that's like Irishman, Silence, all those movies he'd barely been like fighting for so long. But I mean, the truth is they did let him make the movie though.
Yes.
Right?
And he funded it himself. He put his own fucking house up.
But then the question of the movie comes, which is an interesting question about the artist in general. How much of this movie is about Vietnam being awful, and how much of it is about Francis Ford Coppola being a genius? How do you express both things as an artist? When you're an artist and you want to show something awful, you also want to show how great you are at being an artist, and how much of it is one or the other. You know what I mean?
I don't know. I mean, first of all, I just think Francis Ford Coppola is one of like the great artists in history, even though
I'm not saying not. Godfather 2 are probably the greatest movies of all time. But like, but still, that doesn't mean you don't have an ego, and it doesn't mean I don't watching this movie. You get a sense like it's just a question about art in general. Like when you're making a movie about something where it really is about this awful thing America did, and you're so upset by it, and you're trying to make a movie to show how awful it is, but you're also making a movie to show how great you are. So you will have that conflict as an artist. Right? I don't know. I feel like that's true for anything.
Yeah, no, I suppose so. But I think and that's an interesting thing about Francis Ford Coppola too, is in my mind, he's made 3 of the greatest movies of all time, and then a lot of very mediocre to horrible shit.
That's the nightmare of like the artist. Is like with Coppola, he makes these masterpieces, and it's not even that he makes awful movies afterwards. It's worse than that. He makes just middle of the road movies. That's the worst part, because the opposite of a masterpiece isn't an awful movie. To me, it's like a middle of the road. It's just the Rainmaker, Right. It's like not bad. Right. It's like actually okay, but you're like, there's none of the touch of the genius in it. That's what's so fascinating. Like he just lost that spark.
No, truly fascinating. But I respect him for making weird shit, I guess, and taking some chances. Although Rainmaker's not an example of weird shit.
Right, that's the thing. It's like they're conventional. Like it's just like a John Grisham. It's like he went from making these masterpieces of film history to being like, I want to be the 4th director to make a John Grisham book into a movie. You know what I mean?
Right.
I don't know. It is scary. Like, what if you I don't know what happened with it. Maybe his ego got burnt out after Apocalypse Now, but it is scary to just kind of suddenly lose it. Like he never really got it back after Apocalypse Now.
No, it's disappointing. I've spent a lot of time thinking about it and getting sad about it.
Or terrified. Like, what if you just like one day woke up and weren't funny,
Yeah. I don't know. What did you do when that happened to you?
You just keep on going,
you keep making obviously stuff. I don't know, but I also wanted to touch on it, and I've talked about it before, and I talked about it on Tuesdays with Stories and other places, but my greatest film viewing experience ever was Apocalypse Now at the Beacon Theater during the New York Film Festival. Louis and I went and we saw it at the Beacon, and Francis Ford Coppola spoke, and Robert Duvall came out, and he was like 90, and he walked like his shoes were tied together, and he goes, "Charlie, don't surf," and like everybody went crazy. I sat behind Sofia Coppola, I got to meet her, and that Flight of the Valkyries, like in the fucking theater with that super sound, was like just insane. I mean, it was so fucking
cool. I'm sure that's the other thing. I am also watching Apocalypse Now on like my small laptop that's covered with jizz stains. Like I'm wiping away the jizz stains to see like the shot. So I couldn't get as completely moved by the grandioseness of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, there's great stuff. And also, while we're talking about, we should wrap up, I guess, but while we're talking about war films, and we didn't talk about this before, but have you seen Restrepo? Because that's one of the best movies of all time.
I don't even know what that is.
That's a documentary about East Afghanistan, and the guy ended up dying. Tim, I forget his name, famous journalist. Him and this other guy became embedded with this unit in East Afghanistan, and it's called Restrepo. You should watch it. It's like up there with Hoop Dreams and Hearts of Darkness on best documentaries ever.
Oh, check it out, yeah.
And it's like, I mean, they're like fully embedded and like taking on action, and like one of the guys dies like it's unbelievable. it's one of the best movies ever.
I
So
love watching people die on film.
I highly recommend.
So I can jack off to it, is what you're saying.
Just to say that it's real, but it's such an amazing, like them talking to these village people. You watch the village people are in it. The YMCA. No, like these people that live in these villages, them trying to talk to them, it shows you just how hopeless this is. Like they're literally like, what? Like they thought they were Russians. They like the Afghanis never noticed the difference between Russians and American. They're like, what is this? And you watch them try to be like, so this is what we're gonna do, right, guys? And they're all like red beards, and they're like, what? It's an unbelievably great film.
I'll check it out. I mean, there's a lot of great things. Like to me, the war movies I love the most aren't even the ones we talk. I actually think Hurt Locker is probably one of my favorite war movies.
Oh yeah, Hurt Locker is great. I love Jarhead too.
I never saw Jarhead. Is that good?
I think it's good.
I guess you just said you loved it.
Yeah. I mean, it's about a unit that doesn't see action. So people were like, what is this shit? Like I think a lot of people were like, what?
But you know what's funny? People are like the Iraqi war. That's not cinematic. But I would say my two favorite war movies are probably, or two of them are definitely Hurt Locker and Three Kings.
Oh yeah, Three Kings.
Is Three Kings a war, or maybe that's just too much of its own story. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Like,
well, I guess it's like such a fictional story. But like, to me, Hurt Locker. The problem I have a lot with war movies is you're watching 2 to 3 hours of bodies getting blown apart just to find out war is bad, which you already knew. You know what I mean? But right. Hurt Locker is the first, kind of with more of an original take, where it's like, yeah, war is bad, but it's also a drug. And let me show you why people kind of can enjoy it at the same time. You know what I mean? That's like an exciting thing about it, or interesting.
Restrepo gets into that too. They talk about, I mean, you got to watch Restrepo because it's just unbelievably good. But they talk about that, like that bond of being in war together. Like you go home, like your wife, you can never have a bond like that with your wife. It's just not going to work. It's just like, what are you going to do? Go see a fucking movie together and have a dinner?
And that's where I think ultimately, even all the Vietnam movies we talked about, because they're so anti-war, and I'm not for the Vietnam War, but because the big message is anti-war, they almost never get into the other side of it, which is, yes, it's awful, but it's also, you're probably more alive than you ever are in any other aspect of your life. And that's an uncomfortable reality that none of those movies really address because they're too making a point about Vietnam itself, but Hurt Locker definitely addresses that in a very. Hurt Locker addresses that without ignoring the horrors of war. You know what I mean? And so I think Hurt Locker to me is one of the best. Another movie that I think is so great is Letters from Iwo Jima. I don't know if you've seen that.
No, we've talked about it before. I think it's Clint Eastwood, who I think is just the worst.
Well, it's from the Japanese perspective. And to me that there's so few every American movie about war is all just American soldiers every time. And part of me kind of like, I was so dying to see the other perspective, because to me, that breaks away the whole, I don't know, the ruse that we're all the same, right? There's a humanity, each person. So when you show the Japanese side of Letters from Iwo Jima, it does it becomes so powerful and insightful to me,
Well, that's the thing.
Perspective.
That's the thing is like, war is so I mean, I don't have the words because I'm not smart or like a poet or anything, but like war is so
you're doing the part from context. Send a poet.
it's just so layered and scary and crazy and all these words, and I wish I was a smarter person.
It's crazy and layered, and you want to see more than just a movie that just says war is bad. Not because war isn't bad, but because we already know that.
Well, what I was going to say though is that like you almost need a documentary. Like, so Ken Burns' Vietnam and Restrepo, those two pieces of work are like nothing can come close to those because it gets in there. And Vietnam particularly, it's like, which is 8 hours long, and Restrepo because they're fully embedded. It's not it's not post. It's not like this is what happened then and here's some news footage. Restrepo, they're embedded. They're filming in real time. So those two movies are the best captures of war.
I do agree. I do think and a lot of these Vietnam movies are legitimately trying to be like, this is what Vietnam's like. They're not just trying to like, Three Kings is a story within the Iraq War. It's not trying to be like the Iraq War. And Hurt Locker is a character study. So I think those movies work as movies themselves, but a lot of these other movies we talk about, they're trying to be about the war. And that's a big thing to try to encapsulate in a movie.
Right.
I do think I do think they can sometimes result in being a little too simplistic, you know?
Right.
But you know, I mean, let me ask you this. I was going to ask you, which war would you have rather been in, World War II or Vietnam?
That's funny because that's like a slippery slope to answer. But let me just answer that with a quick story.
So you're saying you'd rather be with Vietnam, the slopes. All right. Sorry. Anyway,
my friend,
we gotta edit that out.
my friend, no, it's fine. My friend, my friend was in a cab one time. I don't even want to say his name because he doesn't want to get mad. But we were in a cab, and we were talking about the guy was a Vietnam vet, and it was during the Iraq War. And we were drunk, and my friend was like, "Don't you think that's a better war to be? Don't you feel bad for these Iraq people? Because in Vietnam there was like hookers and drug in the jungle, so you get to see some cool shit. And in Iraq, it's just boring. You're in the desert." And the guy was like, "No, man, there was nothing good about it." And my friend was like, "But don't you see my point?" And I had to like grab him and be like, "Dude, you got to pull back on this." But he's like, "Don't you see? You should be grateful you're in Vietnam instead of Iraq." And the guy, it was just like,
"Don't you see?
Insane?
It was horrible, but you also it also wasn't that big of a deal." You can't even get the credit.
But I guess World War II, because first of all, is like it was. You know, I feel like you were more well received coming home. It feels like
you're thinking about the reception after. Interesting.
Yeah, I guess.
So I talk to you about war, and you're just like thinking about how people see you.
Well, I'm trying to think. I mean, like Vietnam is. It depends on where you are. Also, World War II. I mean, like.
I know.
It was all over the place. I mean, are you in Africa? Are you in France? Are you in Japan? I mean,
Vietnam. Let's say you can't choose. Let's say you just know military, Vietnam, or World War II.
I mean, Vietnam seems too horrific. The swamps, the bugs, the heat.
That is a good point. Every time I watch a Vietnam movie and that just shows them going through the jungle in the heat, I'm like, I don't even think I could take this part, much less people shooting at you. I couldn't even, if Vietnam War was just soldiers going through the jungle and no violence, even that would be awful. Like,
yes,
because I hate humidity, and they're wearing the helmets and all the shit. With the humidity, it just seems so gross.
It's amazing that Israel even has an army.
It's a different type of Jew. It really is. The American Jew and the Israeli Jew are very different. But
you obviously have an answer. You wouldn't have come up with this if you didn't have like a funny go-to answer.
I don't have a funny. I mean, I wanted to get that Vietnam thing out. I got it out, and well, I mean, I think you're wrong in the sense that you're not. Well, you're wrong to choose World War II in the sense that statistically you'd have a much higher chance of dying in World War II than Vietnam. So that's the thing maybe you should be factoring. That's the one thing I would say.
Is that right? Was there a much higher percentage of death?
Sure. I mean, there's definitely a lot more people who died, but I guess a lot more people were drafted.
I mean, there's 57 countries involved in World War II, and there's 2 involved in Vietnam.
Right. Wait, is that proving my point or not proving my point?
I think that's disproving. You're like, yeah, more people died in this. I mean, like, one was a world war.
This might be worse than what I said. The Blues Brothers had no blues music.
Yeah, I mean, like.
Well, I don't know. I mean, it definitely seems like more people died in Saving Private Ryan than in Full Metal Jacket.
Yeah, Full Metal Jacket, like 3 people died.
Yeah, Saving Private Ryan, like pretty much, I think 2 billion people died in that movie. Wait, World War II is definitely worse.
We got to get to ranking the movies.
Oh, we forgot to rank last time. Okay, fine. Yeah,
did we really? Rank. What was last time?
But it didn't matter because I think it was pretty obvious. I think we only did 3 movies. It was like, the ranking would have been obvious.
Right. Oh, yeah. Christmas Vacation, Home Alone, It's Wonderful Life.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's, I mean, it might be obvious this time, too.
Well, you want to add a couple to them or just do the 4?
Well, we'll put Platoon in and do those 4, I guess.
Okay, fine.
So
4. Okay, we're gonna guess each other's, right?
Okay, let's guess each other's.
All right, hold on.
Well, Platoon is your 4th favorite.
Well, yeah. So you're gonna guess mine? Okay.
I'm guessing yours. Platoon's your 4th favorite. And I'm gonna say then Saving Private Ryan is 3 and Apocalypse Now is 2. Or no, that's flipped.
No, I don't think so. I think I was more affected by the action sequences in Saving Private Ryan than I was affected by Apocalypse Now as a whole.
Interesting. Well, affected is interesting, I guess. I mean, like,
I don't know. I mean, just watching them now. I mean, definitely when I was younger, I would have said Apocalypse Now all the way. But I don't know. I had trouble. It's one of those things that I had trouble like connecting to.
I can see that. I love the Apocalypse Now, and like I said, I've seen it a lot, and I've been obsessed with it at times in my life. But I certainly understand what you mean. Apocalypse Now I can do a lot of. I watch it in. I take breaks now because I'm like, all right, let me go get some lunch and come back.
You know what? Yeah, you know what it is too. I mean, Apocalypse Now is this weird thing where it's kind of a little like a comedy, like Doctor Strangelove, but also trying to be like it's like absurd but real at the same time. And somehow, like, I know there's fucked up shit in it, but for some reason it doesn't disturb me. Maybe because it's so not real. The way Saving Private Ryan has parts that really get to me, like him shushing the Jew while he's putting the knife in, or the coward shooting that defenseless guy at the end, or like
I'd like to
the whole opening.
The Jew.
I don't. I don't know. I think it affected me more. So yeah, I'd put Apocalypse Now
3.
Yeah,
that's fair. I mean, it's not crazy. I mean, yeah. So obviously, Full Metal Jacket's 1, but it is interesting the points we're making about Full Metal Apocalypse Now. Everybody I know and all these critics said the first half of Full Metal Jacket's amazing, and it comes apart in the second half. But I actually think that's more of a complete picture. I do think Apocalypse Now, the first 3 quarters are much better than the last quarter.
Yes, Apocalypse Now obviously has great stuff in it, and it is really entertaining, and like every sequence is really interesting. I just don't know if it comes together as a whole. Full Metal Jacket, it's not, the ending is actually pretty good. It's the middle part where you're kind of like, is there a story to this movie? No, for a little bit, but I actually think the ending is pretty effective with the woman in the end.
Yeah. Full Metal Jacket, to me, I do love that they're writing for the paper. The best character in Full Metal Jacket, I didn't get the chance to say, is the photographer, I think. He's like the most interesting character to me.
Yeah. What happens to him? Did he
he's kind of like a goofball. No, he kills the woman, and he's like, I did it.
Right.
I saved his ass, and he's kind
of, even though he don't want him to, even though he was looking out for him, and
he feels like he's part of the unit now. Like he's kind of joined the unit, and right after that, Animal Mother says, "Hey, you're fresh out of friends. Cowboy's dead. You don't have any friends here." Right. And it kind of implies even the photographer's not. He's with us now.
Yeah,
it is like a transformation there. So the photographer at the beginning of the middle, if that makes sense. When you first are introduced to him, he hasn't seen any action. He's dying to see the action. He's like, please let me go see the action. He's kind of a nerd. He's got like soft combed over hair, and he's just a photographer. And even when they meet up with the unit and Private Joker sees Cowboy and he's fucking around with him, the photographer's just kind of standing there being like, I don't know what this is. He's just kind of a goof, and he's creeped out by this unit. And by the end, he's kind of been embraced by the unit. He doesn't even think twice. He blows away.
That's interesting. There is these kind of ironic character arcs, right? So he actually becomes this like heroic guy. Vincent D'Onofrio becomes really good at at rifle play. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of ironic turn of events. Also, Full Metal Jacket is very real. It feels like real soldiers. They have their sense of humor is fucked up in a real way. I mean, Apocalypse Now is, I mean, I know it's trying to be absurd, but you don't really, it doesn't feel real. And I do think, I understand that they don't humanize Vietnamese people and you're capturing that, but I do think seeing that woman at the end praying and saying, shoot for me, it's something that is not in Apocalypse Now at all, to the point where it's like, I get a little uncomfortable. Like they're just using them as, it's like you're saying something's awful, but not showing their humanity. So Full Metal Jacket, that ending touches me more.
Right. Yeah. And
than anything in Apocalypse Now, I think, you know?
Yeah, I do think I had a thought, and then I started listening to you. Now I forget what.
Even with the dogs in the boat, you don't really see. You just see them get shot really quickly. You know, there's not like, I don't know. Also, another funny thing about Saving Private Ryan: everyone who gets shot in Saving Private Ryan dies. Like no one gets shot and survive. They all get shot, and they try to save them, and then they die.
Interesting.
No one actually survives a gunshot in that movie.
Right. That's a good point, but. I forget what I was going to say, something about Full Metal Jacket, and I can't remember now. But yeah, upon rewatching,
the rapport or the soldiers, I don't know.
It's the only Vietnam movie that doesn't take place in the jungle. That's completely unique.
Oh yeah, it's like in a town.
Yeah, they're kind of in like a bombed out city, and
maybe that's why I liked it more. I didn't have to imagine I was in the jungle. But better weather.
It literally, as far as I know, that's the only movie that's not Vietnam movie that's not taking place in the jungle.
That's an interesting point. Yeah, it's also like it does feel more real than the other movies. It has like a documentary feel at times. Oh, obviously they're like talking to the camera at certain points. You know,
right?
Those soldiers feel real. They don't feel. Yeah.
amazing line in the movie. Matt Private Joker, who can again, you keep using comedy as a defense mechanism until
Yeah.
the final scene where he can't lift his gun, which is amazing too. He fucking drops his gun and puts this out. But one of the great lines ever, he goes, I joined the army because I wanted, or the Marines, because I wanted to go see beautiful exotic people in an ancient culture and kill them. I mean, that's like one of the great lines in any movie ever.
It's great, and it captures something you don't see in the other movies, which is these soldiers like knowing it's awful but being ironic about it. You know,
Yeah.
like it gives them more of a real sense of personality. You know what I mean? A lot of times in army movies, you just have them either being really innocent or really evil. I feel like it's more real, where they're kind of like sucked into the thing, but they're a little aware of it. You know what I mean? Even that one, I'm pretty sure it's the one crazy guy who's like pretty insane, who kills a lot of them, who's the one who's like, we're not here to save anyone. Isn't he the one who said that when they're looking over the dead bodies?
Oh, Animal Mother. Yeah. He's the one that says, and that's another thing with the photographer, who's again so great, where he's like, at least he died for a good cause. And they're like, what's the cause? And he's like, freedom. And then Animal Mother's the one's like, we're not here for freedom. And if I had to sum up what I'm doing here in one word, it would be poontang.
Yeah, it feels, there's something journalistic about it in a way. And I think it's based on the story of the guy who really was there. You know what I mean? And it's based on a short story about a guy who was there. And yeah, and it's funny because Kubrick movies don't typically feel like journalistic. You know, there's like a stylization to them. But this is like a very journalistic movie. I know, it really affected me. I think it's a darker truth, I think, than, you know, Apocalypse Now is visually amazing, but I guess I don't connect anything that real to it, you know?
Right. I just think, again, well, you've made great points, and I've thought the same things about Brando, and Hearts of Darkness does take away from it, knowing that they were just like, I'll come up with an ending, but which is insane.
Which is not a fair way to judge a movie, but, you know, because we wouldn't have known it, but it is true. Yeah.
But the whole opening from the beginning through the Kilgore sequence is like filmmaking at its absolute finest, in my opinion.
Yes.
Like absolute masterful filmmaking. And the tiger sequence is great. I mean, there's so many fucking great
sequences. The movie is ultimately about Coppola being a really great director.
I don't agree.
And he really gets that going for a while, but then it just kind of falls apart at the end. You think I'm going to get really attacked for this, or?
As what?
You think we're going to get attacked for this, for the Apocalypse Now thing, or?
No, I don't know. I don't think so.
I bet not the same way as Home Alone, because Home Alone is like a childhood thing, so people are really sensitive to that.
Yeah, totally. I think a lot of people will be. I don't think so. I think like somebody's gonna hate something.
Yeah, sure.
That's the
sign of success. But it's like when you shit on Weird Al Yankovic. You're not allowed to shit on Weird Al Yankovic because it's everyone's childhood. Even though I truly think he's not funny, and I don't get it. But he's like, you're not allowed to make fun of it because it's so connected to people's childhood.
Well, the funniest thing Weird Al's ever been a part of is Frank. Weird Al's on the plane. Naked Gun. And the Naked Gun. He's like, thank you. And he's like, they're not here for you. Yeah. Weird Al Yankovic is on the plane. It cuts to Weird Al.
That's
amazing.
Amazing. Naked Gun. Amazing.
We got to wrap up. We're longer than Apocalypse Now here.
All right. So my guess, the director's cut. Am I guessing? Which is terrible, by the way. Am I guessing your list, or?
Yeah.
Your list is obvious. Your list is number one's got to be Full Metal Jacket. I mean, obviously you connected to the most. That's where you got the title for your podcast.
Yes.
Full Metal Jacket, and then I guess you'd have to put Apocalypse Now 2.
Yes.
Platoon 3, Saving Private Ryan 4.
No, I'm going to say Saving Private Ryan 3, Platoon 4, because I do love Saving Private Ryan. Like, I don't want to fucking give the wrong. I do love it. Like, I like, you know, there's some cheese and it bothers me and it's eye rolling. I look the other way.
There's shit that hits you.
There's some fucking great shit in there. Yeah. I love it. And Hanks also, I didn't even touch on it. You touched on it, but like, he's amazing. He's just so good.
And like his humanity as an actor is just like, like you see him, like the humanity is just keeping as a small amount and forgetting who he is pretty amazing. The speech he gives about being a school teacher is great. It's just staged in a bad way. It could have been done in a much better way.
There's also a moment to the battle with the cows where they hide behind the cows and the German, they have that battle. There's a moment, talking about staging, where it's shooting. Oh, I think that's the same scene. And it's shot Ed Burns from behind. Is shot in a way where his Brooklyn jacket, it just says bro. There's BRO. And it's like, oh, it feels like not so subtle, like bro. You're like, all right.
There's so many. Like, there's one part where Barry Pepper, they're really mad at the one German guy because he killed Giovanni Ribisi, and Barry Pepper, German guy's like speaking in German to not get killed, and Barry Pepper just grabs and goes, "Enough of that, pig lad." It's like he just calls it German. It's like, I mean, it's German. Why are you calling it pig lad?
Yeah,
I don't know.
A few sequences like that, but I do love it, and Platoon I think is great too. There's a lot of great stuff in it, but there's just it's not as rewatchable. And Tom Berenger with like an actual, he looks like Scar from fucking The Lion King.
Yeah, it's like a Disney it's like a Disney character trait. It's ridiculous. Oliver Stone just like has this weird good versus evil thing that's just really simplistic. He's just a moron. He's just a complete moron. Politically, everything. But Hurt Locker for me is number one. Or no, Letters from Iwo Jima is number one. Hurt Locker is number two for overall great war movies. But yeah, this was a fun one. We really had to rush it in, and we've watched a lot of people die in the last couple hours. I hope people appreciate that we had to watch all these movies.
Yeah, I'm gonna go finish watching Saving Private Ryan. I might even watch Restrepo again too, which you should watch, and then maybe we'll do best documentaries at some point.
Yeah, that'd be a great one. And we talked about Holocaust movies. That'll be fun. We can't do that after war movies. That's insane.
No, because Holocaust and war, they're similar, really.
Yeah, there's a lot of overlap.
All right, this was great, I think. So everyone, well, let's do pluggy type things, but leave nice-ish comment, nice-ish.
You can have a little, but yeah, don't, we're sensitive. Don't don't call us like fucking morons. Well, what it is, I don't think you're all being, I was telling this to Joe. Some of you are just commenting, I think, assuming that we're not going to read it. We are going to. Like, I appreciate that you think we're like better than that, but we're not.
No,
so just know that we're going to read it.
I get emails, like I get an email being like, here comes one. And so sometimes they're so nice that I'm like, here we go. And then some of them are like, you piece of shit, fucking idiot. I'm like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah. And, so just know we're going to read it. And so, just soften the blow a little,
Yeah. Take her easy. All right. So you want to plug your show?
And don't have like fatter than Vincent D'Onofrio in Full Metal Jacket. Like, that'll really hurt my feelings if you all say that. I feel like people are never going to say it now. But anyway, plug my Ron and Millie, my solo show. I'm doing it Sunday, January 31st at 7 p.m. Eastern on Zoom. And link to my bio. Link to free tickets in my bio. My Instagram. It's on the bio of my Instagram. Raanan Comedy. There's too much information. Whatever. Raanan Comedy.
I know what's happening is those comments are slipping into your brain right now, and it's throwing you off. But also, let me just say this to all the people that think Raanan's a blowhard, liberal, piece of shit idiot. At least go listen to his stand-up. His stand-up is great. You're not going to dislike the stand-up. Even though he thinks John Hughes is a racist, which is a horrible take, and Field of Dreams is conservative, which is one of the single dumbest takes I've ever heard in my life. There's some horrible takes. I mean, John Hughes, not a great screenwriter, is literally like just absurd. But fantastic person, an amazing comedian. Go check out both albums. Thank you so much. Yeah. Check out both the albums, and you'll enjoy the hell out of it. And I'm in Royersford, Pennsylvania, January 27th. And
nice.
And then Key West, February 11th through the 13th. I'm hoping to not die.
Hell yeah.
We'll see. Yeah. And so subscribe. If you're watching, go click subscribe and tell some friends and share it with some people.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much.
All right. Awesome. Good work.